Welcome and good afternoon. I have Chetan with me and I have Snehal with me, another of our colleagues. The topic today, very intriguing, very relevant, very personal, very our own fear. And as how in the team, all of us remain so excited about this topic that we have Malvika supporting us at the back end and Snehal here. And since Snehal, you are here, I would want you to introduce this topic to our audience today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session on fear. And I'm Snehal, and Rohi's already introduced me. So, for the purpose of this webinar, when we talk about fear, I will also be using insecurities, maybe even paranoia, although that's extreme fear, as all synonymous. Yeah, so whether it's fear, whether it's anxiety, whether it's insecurity, we're going to be talking about it as the same thing. Fear, of course, I think all of us have had our share of fear or insecurity, especially when you're about to start something. That fear is always going to be there in all of us. So, one, how do we tackle it? Does it ever go away? Do we have to overcome it? Is it something that we have to constantly live with? Because it can be exhausting, right? To go over it and over it again and feel the same thing. It's not a good feeling. It's not it is very uncomfortable. So it's a constant battle. And can we ever, let's say, reach a point where we fear nothing? And is that even possible?
That's interesting, Snehal, what you said, can we ever reach a point that we fear nothing? And somewhere that's leaving me thinking that, what if that was a possibility? That if I, as a person, could actually be in that state and fear nothing, what would it be like to be away from all my fears, all my insecurities? What would it be like to not fear anything and just think that anything or everything that I'm dreaming, I'm imagining is possible for me? What would it be that when that fear is not there and I'm not stopping myself from anything? So it's a very nice perspective that you say, can we reach that point that we fear nothing? And also relevant here is what and comes to my mind, that come what may, we all have had our journeys, we all have had our, life experiences, and yet it's very difficult to say that today we do not fear anything. Cognitively, we know that there's nothing to fear, yeah, but still, when it comes to actually say right from a fear of a cockroach to fear of death, we have our own oscillations between physical and emotional and very stupid kind of fears also, if I could say, but they sound stupid, but to the person who they matter, they are really very deep and rooted within. So that's something I think I would want to experience, that what would it be to be without fear, and why even this question of fear, how does it seeps in? What is it that we anticipate that we get fearful? What is it that is there in that hesitation that we get fearful? What is in that, what is that we are inhibiting and we are anticipating and we are kind of withdrawing, that we get fearful? What is that risk? Why is it such a big thing? So that's what I'm just sitting contemplating here as we are discussing this topic.
Yeah, personally, for me, Roli, when I think about it, there are a few things that that I absolutely don't fear, and I may have overcome it. I think because of the stage of my life that I am in now, I think my fears are more related, or fear could be more related to, okay, I have worked for X number of years, so that makes me an expert at something, or I should be better at it. So when it comes to my job, or even if it comes to me pursuing or climbing up the ladder, or even trying something at this stage, I would think that with the level of experience I have, or the stage of my career that I'm in now, I should really fear nothing, right? So for me, the question really is it really fear of change, or fear of the unknown, or is it fear of taking a chance on something, or fear of taking a risk at this stage? What am I willing to risk?
Yeah, and I think it's, to an extent, a lot of our fears, if we see that way, we can relate it to this portion of what is there to risk. Because sometimes, or in fact, many a times, at least for me, I can say, The fear is another way of putting that I am not willing to risk out what is my chance to not do that, right? So somewhere it is that I am not prepared, I am not willing, I am not comfortable and confident to take that risk. And that also contributes to me being fearful about, me withdrawing from that particular thing. And risk per se, it's very, it now since you say that, it comes very deeply to me that risk is basically what, probably is the foundation stone of what is keeping us away, of what is later culminating as our fear. The root of it is that risk. And that's what I think it is. And how, if that was the thing, then to do away with risk means practicing taking that risk bit by bit, every day, every moment. Perhaps if that could be one way to go. How does that sound?
So yeah, you're saying that we're holding back because we don't want to risk maybe like our relationships. We don't want to risk maybe I have a certain amount in the bank account. I'm not willing to start over and risk those savings, right? And but think about it. We've always had a relationship with risk, right? We've always taken risks. So why do we reach a certain stage in our life where the scarier something seems, the riskier it also seems. Like it seems directly proportionate, but it's not the case, right?
Yes.
Just because something is mighty scary, it doesn't mean that that's the proportion of risk that you will be taking. So does emotion kind of ride us to not take that decision because it's not necessarily true? So do we somewhere need to balance our emotion and logic when it comes to risk taking?
I think it will be prudent to see this relationship between fear and risk, and by what you say and by what I'm alive to also, and I'm sure the audience also somewhere is identifying with that. In fact, at this moment, I would want audience to start commenting or writing to us as to what is their take on fear and risk and the correlation between us. Meanwhile, we are taking this discussion forward, but let's have your views also. We are here in live, and we would want to hear from you also. What do you think is the relationship between fear and risk? And from what Snehal you said, one question and which comes to my mind is very alive, and let's have Chetan also step in and say, if fear and risk have that degree of correlation, can I conclude that people who are not averse to taking risk are fearless? That if risk and fear are so correlated, could it be that if you are a risk taker, then you are fearless also? Chetan, let's hear from you also on this dynamics.
So there'll be really two sides to this. One, what Snehal was saying, that we take a risk in life and we get somewhere and we get certain benefits or rewards of that risk in terms of a better job or a better career or a better salary, or if you're in business, there are returns associated with it. So we get something as a result of risk. And cognitively, we know that when we take a risk, or everyone says, for example, let's take calculated risks and so on and so forth. And we take those risks and we get those rewards, right? And the moment we've got the reward, that becomes the basis for all insecurity. That now I've got it and I don't want to lose it. I've worked for 10 years, I've reached a certain title or a certain designation or a certain standing in society. And I think that's where the fear steps in. Now I've got it and I don't want to live that journey again of getting it, and I don't want to risk it. And when you're talking about the relationship between fear and risk, or is what your question was, if I am adept at taking risks, do I essentially become fearless? I think there's another element to it as to why people take risks, and it's also to do with desire. And you can't examine fear without looking at desire in the first place. For example, I have a certain desire to achieve certain goals. It could be my career, it could be making more money, or it could be having a better relationship, a bigger house, or something or the other. Now I have the desire, and so it propels me to take risks. So I somehow convince my mind to have the courage to go on that journey. But it doesn't mean that I'm without fear, right? I'm pushing myself because the greed of that award for me is far greater than the fear that I have. So I'll confront it when the end result of the end product is greater than what I already have and there's nothing to lose. For example, people do that in crisis. There is nothing left to lose, so might as well go all out. And I think that's very important to remember while we are examining the relationship between fear and risk, that we will usually risk when the reward is so much greater that it doesn't matter for me to confront my fear. So greed makes us overlook reality. Greed makes us overlook, or the greed of achieving a certain reward might make me temporarily overlook fears. But the important point to remember, everyone does this sometime in their life. But the moment we've got the reward, what happens? Right? The moment I've got the reward, now that becomes the basis for fear, and I don't want to do it again because I want to conserve, I want to preserve, I want to protect, I want to live in that cocoon. I don't mind that that cocoon is not expanding as long as it remains secured and stuff. And I think that becomes the basis for even more fear. And then the way out of it is not risk, because I'm unwilling to take the risk. So risk and fear have a correlation for sure, because when what I am willing to risk or what I'm unwilling to risk is basically my fear. I want a better relationship, or I want a better life, or I want to overcome a certain fear. I'm unwilling to take the risk to do so, and that becomes the downfall as well. Right? So there is a correlation. Let me take an example. I'm remembering suddenly, years ago, I was coaching, this is way back, right? 14, 15 years back, I was coaching a CFO of this Swiss company. The founders of this company happen to be the founders of Bombay Stock Exchange as well. So this is a fairly large setup and a fairly established guy who I was coaching. And while I was coaching him, he shared a story that sometime back he'd quit his job, and he always as a child wanted to start a restaurant business and stuff, so he started a restaurant. Now he's been in this profession for about 25 years. He took the risk for the love of his life that I want to be in the restaurant business, so he started that restaurant, and that restaurant failed because he has an experience as a CFO. He doesn't have an experience running a restaurant, so the restaurant failed, and he came right back into the job. And he's sharing with me in this very intimate session that how he was crushed after that failure. He's been a super successful CFO, right? He's handling one of the largest companies in India at probably one of the top 2% of salary brackets and stuff. And he's sharing the story that now he's super crushed because that restaurant being failed. And I asked him a simple question that you took a risk and it failed. You learned something in the process. Now you'll be better at it. Your probability is probably greater that if you start that restaurant again. So why not bloody do it? Right? And you know the response I got from this guy who's as wise as anyone, that I can't handle being called a failure. Right? The response was not that I don't understand it. Yes, I can do better, but I can't handle being called a failure. And in my mind, as I'm thinking about that story now, I think if only people can make the transition that I can handle being called anything, there is no fear. That if I can handle being called anything by anyone, now what's left is a positive attitude, kind of a mindset. Where is the fear in that? So I guess people have talked themselves into being in this business of saying no to everything, because they fear the current status quo is what they will lose, or the current security is that they will lose. And this business of saying no to everything is the inability to take the risk, as you say, and that kind of ensures that you remain in fear.
No, and Chetan, what you said, I'm so glad to see that the audience so resonates with what you're saying. From one of the audience, we have a sharing which says that the management is trying to change his job, and what should he do? He's comfortable at this point, not considering his comfort zone per se, and he's asking you that what should he do? And from what you said, I think that is quite clear that, if you can be okay with people calling you anything, and as long as it is okay to step out of that comfort zone, why not? What possibilities would it open for you if you're okay, and if you can keep that insecurity aside, that I'm okay with whatever people call me? So not, I mean, you can add to that answer, but all I'm trying to say is that when you said that if you can be okay with people calling you anything and not associate failure to that risk, to that fear back in your head, that is how this whole chain can break and possibilities open for anyone. Yeah,
And I
interesting.
think fear of success is as big a fear as fear of failure. Because with fear of, and why people fear success is, I guess, because they're not willing to take the risk of, all the responsibility that's suddenly been put on them. They're answerable to so many more people.
Yeah,
It's a big one.
interesting point, Snehal. And I think people, all of us, fail to put success in a certain perspective, right? Let's take an example, right, which everyone will associate with. You're in college and you have your graduation ceremony, right? And in that graduation ceremony, of course, let's say in a very typical fashion, you'll be given a gown, you'll be given your headgear, and you'll be celebrating, and some dean or some senior professor will be presenting you a degree, and there'll be claps, and you'll be meeting your friends, and you'll reach a milestone in life. So everyone's been there. And when you receive that degree, or when your course is finally over, you might now be an MBA or a PhD or whatever it is that you've done in life, you finally breathe a sigh of relief because you feel successful, right? I want to
Yeah.
point a I want to point a difference between success and recognition. That degree was recognition. That degree was not success. That finally that you've got that MBA degree, or you've got your doctorate, or you've got your engineering degree was a milestone because it's recognition. That wasn't success. Success was when you enrolled in the college. Success was throughout the period of 3 or 4 years that you spent in college. You submitted your assignments. Success was when you read about your book. Success was when you submitted your thesis. Success was when you stayed up at night to study while everyone else was partying. That was success. Success is a daily thing. Success has nothing to do with recognition. You've spent 4 years, you've learned all you've got. In my eyes, you're successful. That degree just happens to be a recognition. And what people confuse with success is recognition, and recognition comes from other people, right? And what we fear is not whether I'm successful or not, whether I'm being recognized as successful or not. Right? So I'm living my life based on what other people would think of me, whether it's society, whether it's my boss, whether it's my friend, whether it's my wife, whether it's my husband, because the recognition is what I'm after. I'm not after success, really. And when I see that that recognition won't come, or the opposite of recognition, which is demeaning me, may come, I don't want to take a risk, because I am so used to living my life as to what other people will think about it.
It's an interesting turn of conversation, Chetan, because most of the time when we interact with people, a common statement that we hear them make is, I don't care about the word. I care a damn. I don't care what other people's opinion are about myself. And now when you say it, that fear and that recognition and that success is all about how others are perceiving, why does that then become such an important thing? I mean, we are the same individuals who grew up, who in college really didn't care
Really,
about anything.
if people didn't care about what other people would think, there'll be no extra bedrooms in the house.
True.
You'll be living in what you live in.
True. Absolutely.
Yeah, so people see it's very simple. Uh, you want to risk, when you have to take a risk, it's only a question when you really want something and you don't have currently. And that's also the root of fear. You never take a risk with something that you don't want. For example, someone who doesn't want to climb a Mount Everest, there's no risk in it. They'll never attempt it. So it's only about something that you want. Something that you want is in the future, and so it's uncertain and brings all sorts of fears in your mind. Now, the risk in people's mind, let's say you want to, we take people for treks, right, and walk the talk and stuff. The risk in people's mind is not that they don't want to come and see the mountains up there and see a nice, fully starlit sky. The risk is the shame that what if they have to turn back midway? And that shame is other people, right? That shame is other people. That question is other people. Let's say you want to write a book, or you want to record a video and post it on YouTube. Or let's say some other people who are watching this might want to do their own webinars, for example. What will stop them, right? What will stop them is judgment. It's not that you can't write. You're unsure whether what you write is good enough, and good enough for whom? Is it good enough for yourself? If it is, then fucking write it. But you will judge whether it's good enough, and what will other people who read that book say? What if it gets a 1-star review on Amazon? What if my video on YouTube get 10 dislikes before it gets a like? What if no one turns up for my webinar? Everything that will stop you is all the other people but your own ability.
True.
No one says a book has to be a good book, right? That's only when you put it out there. If it's yours, if it's in your mind, if it's something that you want to say and you put it out there, then it's yours. What's there to fear?
Right. So when you take a risk, there are only two possible outcomes. Either it works or it doesn't. You either succeed or you fail.
Right.
So do you? So is it like a habit? So like you keep getting better at it. So you keep so that you increase your chances of success.
Yeah, but that will come only as a result of doing it, right? That won't come sitting
Right.
and thinking that one fine day I will write a book. The only way you will get better at writing a book is by doing it.
Right.
I'll
So
give
that's
you
what I'm
my
saying. So you. Sure.
I'll give you my example. When I wrote my first book, right? I've written 8 books, and none of them happens to be a bestseller, or they're available on Amazon, but none of them happen to be a bestseller or something. My first book, which I sent to 8 publishers, was rejected by everyone, so I published it myself, right? So publishers rejected it, thinking it's not good enough, right? So by all means, I shouldn't be putting it out there, so I published it myself. My second book, I didn't even bother to go to a publisher, I published it myself. The third, fourth, fifth, sixth happened like that. The seventh and eighth ones were done specifically with certain publishers for a certain community. Now, the same publishers who that time rendered the book not good enough, in this period of lockdown, 2 of them have turned down with back up with specific contracts to write a book because they like the way I write. Now, how come that happened? The same guys who were judging, because of whom I should have given up the ambition to even write, are turning back that now we want to give you a contract to write for us specifically because we like the way you write. So it's all fucking bullshit in my head as to what you should. We would rather demean ourselves thinking that I can't or I'm not good enough without ever even trying it, rather than assuming this position that I can risk regardless of what others think. How does it matter to me what others think of my book? I'm writing because I want to be an author. I am an author. Now you fucking hate my book, your problem.
And that's the thing, right, Chetan? So it would have been so easy for you to stop after book 1 or book 2 because,
or not even get to book 1 because the
or
publisher
not
said
even,
it's lousy.
right. So you could have easily accepted what the publisher said, and that is one person's opinion at the end of the day, and that could have determined, and that can easily determine someone's career, because one person sitting there, and you let that one person get to you and say that you're not good enough, or you don't,
Right.
you're not an author.
Because I took the risk to put it out anyways, now I have 2 leading publishers in the world during a period of lockdown, 2 contracts sitting in my mailbox, which I haven't approved yet because I'm still debating whether I should now publish myself or through them. But I have that. So I think just the way we were discussing that success is a daily thing, right? That it's not about the recognition. You're successful every day. If you're in your job, till the time you will feel successful when you get your promotion, but you were successful. That's why you've got the promotion, right? So success is a daily thing. Similarly, failure is a daily thing. I can believe what others are telling me and I fail right now without even getting to that point, or I can disregard absolutely. So I think it's actually about being free from the joy of compliments as well as the fear of insults. It shouldn't matter what other people think, whether you're really good, because that will tell you that I've arrived and there is nothing left to do more, or when people are insulted. I think you got to be free from everything, and then it's about doing what you really want to do.
No, I think that that's quite a different, intriguing, but a very simple way to arrive at something. That if you, as you rightly said, if success is daily, so is failure, and so is risk, if that's a little bit of practice or whatever, howsoever you want to put it. But in the end, it is that opinion about yourself that matters. So rather than worrying about what others are thinking of me, whether they are thinking of me as a success or they are thinking of me as a failure, if I can stick to what my conviction is around whatever I'm trying to do, that would be a better place to start to begin with. And having said that, since it is about fear, another thing which is very alive to my mind is that even if, let's say, I can apply this to principles or let's say subjects related to my job, my being, my work passion, my overall way of dealing with relationship. How about fears? And some of our audiences, they are very alive with the questions, and audiences, we will be taking each and every question, but I'm just trying to take out some thread out of what audience is quite wanting to know as of now, is that how about those fear related to attitudinal uncertainties, about insecurities, about absence of social security, materialistic comfort, survival zones. These are some of the things that are very alive in their minds. And I think I would want to begin by saying that these two are quite prevalent fears in our mind. And the worst is, even if, let's say, you are so-called successful by the definition of the world, yet many a times you are privy to these fears. Many a times you are privy to these kind of insecurities. So let's take the discussion forward slightly in that direction too before we come to audience's perspective and questions.
Right. So they're talking about insecurities, you're talking about social security. I'm just trying to read some of them. People are talking about materialistic comfort. The only way that you will get any of this is through work, right? When they're talking about social security and comfort and this, that, and the other, the only way that the approach to it is through your work. And there's a recent statistics I read. There is a scary percentage of our time that's spent on work. If you compare it with anything that you do in life, you spend a scary percentage of your life working, right? Even when you compare it to sleep, your sleep is lesser and your time spent in office is far greater than that. There's a scary percentage of life spent in work. You spend more time with your colleagues than you spend with your children and spouses. That's the extent of life that is spent on work. You spend over 50 to 60% of your time just on your work in your office and your career and stuff. How good is it to spend over 50% of your life doing something that you don't even like? Just in the name of security. Because security will come through work. It doesn't say what kind of work. You identify what you would like to do, confront your fears and go ahead and do it, because it's more than half your life being spent in office. Some people work 12 to 14 hours a day. They see more of their reportees and subordinates and managers than they'll ever see of their kids. That's the amount of time gone into work. And I don't buy the argument that that's for security. I think that's for fear. That's for protecting. That's for not taking a risk of doing something different. So 50 to 60% of your life has gone into doing something that you don't even bloody like. Only can losing stop to matter, right? And losing, I mean by losing in terms of what other people think of it, can that stop to matter? Because the moment that stops to matter, I have a sense of freedom, and that sense of freedom comes from not fearing the freedom or not fearing what will happen. I will lose my material comfort or social security. What material comfort? 80% of the time you bloody well sitting in office. What material comfort? Whatever you're buying, this 4-bedroom house and fancy cars and stuff, is only to show to other people that you have that material comfort. It's not for yourself. And I think there is no change that's going to happen unless we develop the ability to acknowledge that I can give all these excuses which I'm coming up with to project myself as successful in front of the world, but they're not real. And they can come from something that you love.
Absolutely. Most of the time, and we see this all across that we go, whichever stage you're working, whether you could be just a management trainee out of your college, or you could be the CEO of the most happening company around, yet what you said applies true to everyone. That that thing to hold on to it, that thing to persevere with it.
Really, the fear can be that I will lose my material comforts. The fear can be fear of ghosts. The fear can be fear of heights, and fear can be fear of water, or can be any other emotional fear. The risk is that you lose if you take that step, right? Right. The risk is that you lose, and lose by whom? Let's take a situation. Let's imagine for a moment in our life there is no judgment of other people. No one else will ever condemn you or blame you for anything. No one will put pressure to do or not do anything. And no one will ever in this world label you as a failure or not a failure. Now what will you do? That risk of losing goes away, doesn't it? So the fear is fear of other people. It's not your own. If I go and climb that mountain and I return back not conquering it, if there was no fear of judgment, condemning, blame, pressure, or labeling, you would go and try it because there's no shame. We live far too much of a life based on what others will think, what the society will think, how my neighbor will judge me, and how my wife will judge me, and how my kids will judge me, and what will the future be, what legacy I will leave and stuff. The legacy you will leave is 70% of your life gone in doing something that you never liked anyways.
So we also start to use fear as an excuse to not do anything. Fear becomes a great excuse, right?
Absolutely. We prefer to blame situations, people, events. We will find excuses as to why I couldn't do it, but I will not acknowledge or take responsibility that I didn't do it because I was afraid of what others will think of me. And so I never do. People stay in relationships forever because of fear. People stay in bad jobs because they believe they might not find another one. People get stuck in different countries and villages because they can't move out. People would rather relive their fears even at an emotional level, whether they have fears of failure or whether they have fears of, let's say, unreal paranormal activities or something. I've met people like that. They would rather stay in it because it's a nice story to tell. You get sympathy, you get pity, you have an excuse. Oh, I can't lose weight because I have thyroid is a popular one. I mean, it's a nice place to be in, isn't it? Because you don't have to do anything. It's taken away responsibility of action, because when you take action, you put yourself at risk of judgment. When you don't take action, there's no risk of judgment. There's an excuse.
But let's say, Chetan, cognitively, I understand all this also. And there is that inner desire in me to, okay, fine, enough, whatever happened, happened. I want to break this chain. Let's say there is somewhere that thing that, but still, I will still fear that what if I lose my job? I will still fear what if I lose my relationship? I will still fear what if I'm not able to earn bread and butter for my family, if I'm the sole bread butter earner for my family, so to say. So, despite understanding it cognitively, despite that latent desire as of now to probably experiment with things, there is something which will still hold me back, sometimes in the name of responsibility, sometimes in the name of insecurity, security, or fear, whatever we want to say. So is there a is there something that can help me with this kind of a situation if that comes to my mind? How do I get that conviction to actually gestate and reap and actually flourish if I really want to?
Simple answer. How do you get conviction? Do it. Do it 5 times, you'll get the conviction. But
Yeah.
I guess what you're essentially saying, really, people aren't willing to put themselves in these uncomfortable positions. We are assuming all these what ifs. I will give you counter what ifs. What if that as a result of losing your job in a year's time, you could have a better career that you love? As a result of losing a relationship, you might finally find someone that you love. As a result of losing your home, you might find up a better city that you might have a better career in. You can imagine any what if, no? I've imagined all the worst what ifs that have constricted my action. What about imagining better what ifs for me? Are you in love with yourself, or are you in hatred with yourself that you're willing upon all the bad things that will happen to you? Why can't you imagine well? And that journey is to put yourself through slight bit of discomfort, of course, but there is no breakthrough that will ever happen without putting yourself through discomfort. I think you're talking about a way. 4 things come to my mind that we need in the journey from moving from this constriction of fear to, let's say, overcoming it. First thing is the mindset. First thing is the mindset of this what if. This what if can be anything, right? You are imagining all these what ifs, whether they're real or what their probabilities are. I'm not getting into that, but these what ifs are in the future. What if I will lose? What if I will fail? What if I will lose the relationship? What if people will hate me? You can imagine anything. The first is the mindset. What do I believe in internally? Second is momentum. Right now, after having created a mindset, can I create momentum through action to be able to move into it? And that momentum has to be followed by capability, because I might not have the capability right now. For example, if you have to climb a mountain, you might not have the capability. So the third thing, mindset, momentum, and capability. And in my mind, the fourth thing that is critical and absolutely crucial to me is the confidence. And the confidence comes from trying. Confidence doesn't come from questioning. If you have to write a book, as we were discussing earlier, it will only come through writing, right? It can't come through reading about how to write. If you have to go run a marathon, it will only come through trying about 6 months in a year. It will come through that. It won't come through reading a book, how to run a marathon in 30 days. If you have to lose weight, like we were discussing in last webinar, it won't come about by reading how to do push-ups. It will come about doing them. Right, so mindset, momentum, capability, confidence, MMCC by default.
Good enough. No, and as you say that, Chetan, in fact, one point in the audience a while ago was about that fear is about that lack of confidence. So actually what you said, confidence comes by trying. And so by that little bit of trying every day and practice every day is how there is some way that you can open an insight for yourself. So absolutely. And when you say that, I am also hooked to that one more point you said, that when we have to imagine, why do we end up imagining the worst outcomes? And probably we've heard this, as a proverb long, that hope for the best but prepare for the worst. But this prepare for the worst has been so ingrained into our being, upbringing, conditioning, that in preparing for the worst, what we have inculcated for ourselves is the fear of the worst. And perhaps
I
that
guess
does
again,
nothing but
the answer to this again is confidence, right? That if that worst, supposing, let's say it comes true, why don't I have the confidence that I'll come through it? So what? Right? I
absolutely.
basically don't have the confidence or the emotional energy to deal with the worst, so I don't want to risk my status quo. That's what it comes down to. It might not be working for me. It might be working 50-50 for me. It might not be my ideal situation, but something's happening for me. I'm alive and I'm staying in some cocoon or the other. And I don't want to risk that status quo. That status quo in my mind is people attach a privilege to that status quo, right? That I'm a general manager here, or I'm a managing director here, or I am living in such and such house. That becomes a privilege statement. My status quo is my privilege. What I would answer to you in this question: don't have the privilege, don't attach privilege to it. Your biggest privilege is your mindset. If you have that correct, you come out of any situation and rebuild it. And why can't I have the confidence? So again, we'll come back to this: mindset, momentum, capability, confidence. And if I have the confidence, and your privilege needs to be your confidence, your privilege needs to be your mindset, your privilege needs to be your own faith in your capability, and not what your current status quo is, because your current status quo will keep you rooted in this whole societal mess of expectations and judgment and condemnation, which will happen regardless. Right? We don't stop from condemning even Bill Gates. We don't stop from condemning Modi. We don't stop from condemning Steve Jobs. So who the hell are we? I mean, they can achieve that much and they'll still be condemned. You can be Donald Trump, you'll still be condemned. So why let that stop you? Even Gandhi is being
Yeah,
condemned.
I agree. Yeah, true. I agree, because I think anytime we take a decision, we always fear the worst possible outcome. And it happened to happen after 9/11 with all the
We lost your audio, I think.
I'm
I think,
not saying
Snehal, we are losing.
cautious, but there's a huge difference between being cautious and living in a state of paranoia.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think our success perception, Snehal, is rooted in other people. Right? I am successful when others think I'm successful. Otherwise, I'm not. Standalone, I don't believe I'm a successful person. My success is dependent on what my ecosystem thinks of me, or what people will think of me, or what my managers will think of me, or what my society will think of me. Do I have the things that appeal to other people, that they will think that I'm successful? Our perception of success in life is predicated in other people. Even for emotional fears, right? It becomes a story to have. I couldn't do this because I'm scared of this. I couldn't do this because I had a bad childhood. I can't do this because this is what incident took place in my childhood. I can't do this because my family values this and I can't go against it. All our success perception is predicated in other people. And as long as I let someone dictate my life, it is equal to unhappiness. Always, period. Because it's not your success perception. As long as someone else is dictating my success, as long as you are judging whether I am successful or not, I'll constantly be chasing and constantly be living a life or compromising into a life which is equal to unhappiness. Letting someone dictate your life is unhappiness.
Yeah, and Chetan, we did this in the last webinar also, when we talked about happiness, that how we relate all our happiness into something which is so outside of us. How those screens that we talked of once, how those images and screens are into play. And that's exactly the same thing that we see here itself. There's most of the
Yeah,
time, the fears, those insecurities, those risk-taking aversions, whatever, whichever name we want to address it as, it's nutshell a multiplier effect of that opinion outside of us, being worried about what others would say, being worried about how I'm going to be perceived by them, how my success or failure would come across my near and dear ones, or to those with whom I have a status or a success quotient to share with. So it's
yeah.
it's it's
Yeah, and then I think really a lot of people are asking a question: how do I build my confidence? It's very simple. We answered it last time. You have to be around people that support you to be confident. And you have to limit your time with people who are constantly condemning, judging, and blaming you, no matter who they are. So it's not that you can cut your near and dear ones out of your life, but you can certainly refrain from speaking to them 5 times a day. Confidence is like energy, right? It's an energy. If I am speaking or being around people who give me that confidence, it multiplies. If I'm around people, no matter how good I do, they only have a fault to find, it can't give you confidence. Our confidence is energy we drive from our ecosystem, from the people we are around, the teams that we worked with, and all of those people add to your confidence. Be around people who add to your confidence and not around people who make you inconfident. And that's and the more confidence you have, the less fear you have, because the lesser the judgment of people around you, the lesser you can become immune to that. The more you can become immune to that, rather, more is your confidence to try things.
And also, just to add one line to what Chetan said, most often we even understand confidence as how confident I am coming across to someone. As long as you're trying to come across as confident, is not going to take you anywhere near actual confidence. If you're achieving and if you're wanting to achieve the real sense of confidence, that you want to be confident from within, you want to be confident for what you are, that's something, that is what is meant by confidence, rather than how should I come across as confident, because that coming across will eventually be just a coming across.
There is a very interesting comment on just what you picked up. If India did not get independence during lifetime of Gandhiji, people would have labeled him unsuccessful. All his actions would have had no value. If Gandhiji thought like what Rolly was saying, we wouldn't have had independence.
True.
If he was doing all this to come across as successful, or to come across as non-violent, or to come across as that he's doing something for India, you had hope in hell. So I'm really glad that Gandhiji didn't think like that. I don't think he was in the game to get you independence. He was in the game to teach people non-violence, and that's it. It didn't matter to him whether it happened in his lifetime or the next generation did it. 1963, Martin Luther King comes on the stage and says, I have a dream that black and white would live together and do this and do that. 3 years later, he was shot dead. But 40 years later, you have a black American president. It didn't matter to him that it happened in his lifetime. He wasn't doing it for the result. He was doing it because he believed it was the right thing to do. And I think that's the debate that people get lost in, that is it the right thing to do, or is it an acceptable thing to do? And most people's lives go into doing the acceptable and they forget the right.
True.
And the moment we get into this acceptable, we start living by other people, and that's unhappiness. And then the question comes, how do I lead a happy life? And that happy life gets associated with material comforts. You keep chasing it, you never get it. One fine day you die after spending 60% of your life in a career that you never liked anyways. So that's destiny.
And as I said, we'll be taking questions a little while from now, but there is one which typically caught my eye, which said, and since it is related to the topic we are discussing, does actual nature of fear change with age or circumstance? So we'll park this fear of death for a while, because that could be something that could have to do something with age. As of now, I'm parking it. Otherwise, I don't think so that actual nature of fear will change with age or circumstance. But let's kind of take the thought forward as to what is it that, when you say even actual nature of fear, let's try and understand this, what in the intrinsic, at the core, what fear is. This actual nature of fear was what I got hooked on to, that let's try and decode for our audience and all of us together. And audience, I'm again inviting you to build it up with me, that what is this actual nature of fear? If we were to dissect fear, at the core of it is what? And that's the question that I am asking you to put your comments and views on. And that's the question that we are taking forward with our panel, that if we were to dissect fear and see its nucleus of energy, what is that?
So Snehal, why don't you take a shot at this? How does fear enter the mind?
I think right now it's not happening, right? So how does it enter your mind when you start to think of what am I really scared of? So I would have to say that when you think about it, it enters only when you think about it. So it's thought. It stems from thought.
Wonderful.
So you are imagining a scenario that this is what I'm scared of, and you're imagining that scenario to be real.
Yeah. I'm sitting perfectly right now, right? And there is no fear. Are you afraid in this moment? You're not. And the fear, what Snehal was trying to say, will come when I think about the scenario. And so fear cannot enter the mind without thought. Yes, there could be a situation that's danger, that a fire breaks out, but that's danger. And danger is not fear. Danger is danger. Fire breaks out, you will act in your intelligence and you will run out of the house or do something or the other. But fear is, what will happen if I do this, is what Rolly was saying in the earlier part of the section. I imagine a what if scenario. No fear can enter into your mind without thinking about it. In this moment, is anyone afraid? In this moment, you're not afraid, so it's not real. You're imagining a situation which is making you fear, and then you build all sorts of neurotic action into your life as a result of imagination. So fear is imagination. Fear is not real. And what we were saying earlier, if you have to imagine a better scenario for yourself. What's the big deal?
No, very, very rightly said. And if that is what is the nature of fear, if that is what gives energy, which is our own imagination, which is our own thought, if what leads to it is we valuing opinion of others, we living by the rules of the world, we living and abiding by the status quo set, then what worth are we trying to create in the name of being, choosy, making our choices, being risk conscious and stuff like that? It's all a parts that we build around ourselves, nothing more to it.
I think people have this assumption they have 25 lives to live, right? And they will always have time to do something or the other once this tide closes. I think that's the foolish way to live, that there's always time and they'll be reborn again and have a better life and stuff. All fascination because you've ruined this one, you've never lived it. So now let's build a fascination and another imaginative reality that sometime in life or in another life or in the next to next one, it will change and it'll be happily ever after. All fucking bullshit. It's not going to happen. You one life and you need to question it. Someone's asking, with age, risk-taking ability also changes. I do not agree with it, sir, because if anything happens with age, you have more resources and you're better equipped and more experience to take more risks. But people view it the other way, that I have more responsibility, so I can't take it. You will find an excuse whether you are young or whether you're old. The idea is, or the question that I have to ask you, why do you need an excuse? You'll have it when you're 18, you'll have it when you're 99. And there's
I
one
think
life.
and I think what we don't realize is we have taken risks so far, and I think just be a little more aware of what risks you've taken and how it's worked for you. Whether you were choosing a college to study in, whether you were choosing a job, whether you were choosing a particular field, those are all risks one day. So why is it, yeah, so why is it suddenly so hard for us at 35 or 40 or 45 not to take risks anymore? So everything has an element, every decision or choice that you've made so far has an element of risk.
Answer to that question, which I was sharing earlier, people have to get comfortable in judgment of other people. And that's the only risk.
Yeah.
I've gone through this in my mind. What will go, let's say you're at 50 and you're talking about a career change. What's preventing you? Will I succeed or not? And succeed as per whom? Other people. So we compare success to recognition. What I want is recognition. When I want something that is recognition, recognition comes from other people. If I'm going to live my life on what others think of me, it's a life unlived. All you've done is adjusted yourself to other people's opinion, who were busy doing the same thing, adjusting to other people's opinion. So you build an ecosystem of 150 people who were busy adjusting to each other's opinion, who lived.
Great thought, Chetan. Great thought, Snehal. And we are already 50 minutes into the webinar. If there is something that you want to share, but there is one thing that I certainly would want to bring on the table before we move further, which is, while I understand all of this, but there is one kind of fear which I am particularly alive to, which could be related to my survival or my safety. So, for example, I would not step out in the dark or where I see a lot of strangers and it's some aloof corner of the street. And it's with an intent to be safe and keep myself safe. But having said that, it's not that I don't feel fearful about it. It's not that even if in my imagination, while I'm imagining what could happen, the sense that it leaves me with is goosebumps. Similarly, the fear of, let's say, losing my loved ones to eventual eternity death. Eventually we all, I mean, we don't know why, I mean, life, death is the end of life, and it's never a nice thought and never a welcoming thought to think about it. But having said that, these safety related fears, these fear of losing people to such eventualities are also very vivid fears for me. And
So these
how
are
about
real.
that? I'm
I
sure.
mean, let me say that if there is a threat to your life, it's a real thing. It's not a fear. It's a danger situation. If there's a group of gangs standing outside with knives, obviously you don't walk into it. That's not called I'll be fear. That's not imagination, right? That's a reality. In Delhi, for example, where you're living, it's not safe to go out at night for women, so it's not. I mean, that's reality. Now there is nothing making up. So there are physical fears which are real. If there is a snake that comes, pops out in front of me, I will be running for my life from here. I mean, that's reality, right? So there are physical fears. We are talking about these made up fears, which are fear of losing, which are fear of judgment of other people, fear of, these are emotional fears, which are not reality. These are not physical realities. They may or may not happen, but I bring them to my mind and I alter my physical reality. I imagine a situation from the future that people will think this out of me, and I don't take a risk physically, which I have an option to do so today. I alter my physical reality based on an imagination. What things you are saying I perfectly agree with. If there's a reality where you sense danger, then the intelligence in you says don't do it. If you don't know how to swim, don't say I'll be fearless and jump into the river. You'll be fucking stupid.
Yeah,
That's not an
no one's saying
yeah.
be reckless in overcoming these fears, right? It's we're talking about these emotional fears that
Yeah.
stops you from moving forward and that cripples you, and you don't take decisions, and or you don't take the you're not willing to take the risk. We're not asking you to be reckless.
Yeah. I think people need to cut out excuses. I think we need to separate excuses from fact. So if there is a danger, it's a fact. But if there is no danger and you're making up excuses and imagining danger, it's stupidity. Fear of death, for example, people are talking about, it's reality for everyone. Now, it might happen tomorrow, it might happen the next second, and it might happen 20 years later. The reason you're fearing it is because you've not lived your life. You've made so many compromises and you've put away so many things to be doing later that now you fear, what if my life ends before I do that? That's reality for everyone. Every living being ever born, that's reality. You can't say I didn't know about it.
Yeah, and
So
everything
imagine,
is unknown until you try it.
yeah. And anyways, and because we fear death, we build an afterlife into it.
That's true.
Yeah, no one's seen it. And if they have, they're not going to be here to tell it anyway. So, I mean, why live in it? You have one life, and you have excuses in this one life. You have all the judgment and condemnation and whatever that you denying yourself to be able to live in these fears of emotional things which you're building up. That thing itself builds a comfort zone where you don't have to risk anything. And I think that's the biggest thing. What you need to remember, there isn't fear existing in the present moment. You bring it in. It can't come on its own. Right now, wherever you're sitting in the comfort of your home or office or driving a car, there is no fear. You will bring it in by thinking about it. It can't enter your mind without that. You will it onto yourself.
That's actually you can see it as you say it. When you know that it is through your own thinking, your own imagination, your own thought that the fear enters your mind, you can really see that happening. I may not have lost my job today, but the fear that I may lose it tomorrow might be making me do 1,000 things which I wouldn't do otherwise. And not that I have actually lost it. When I would have, I would still do something that needs to be done. So what anyway is at the point of thinking in either case. So that's absolutely rightly said about it. So I guess it is about that. If I was to sum these points up, it was about
Also,
that.
really, we do it to
Your
other people. What you are saying, like, I am willing it onto my life, right? And let's say you are living with me and you are going in an opposite direction, I will will it onto your life as well if you haven't thought about it. If you do that, that will happen, that will happen, that will happen, that will happen. I'll kill your confidence also. So not only we
no,
do it to ourselves, we do it to,
I have one of the questions in the audience which does say this. I am not fearful to attempt something, but my spouse is stopping me because perhaps it is
yeah.
that partner's fear which he or she is projecting onto you, and that is perhaps stopping you. And therefore, now when you can see it that it's merely a projection, whether your or your spouse's, why the hell even stay with it?
Sir, no one can ever stop you from doing anything. Your spouse is giving a suggestion, you are accepting it, and you're stopping yourself. So stop bullshitting yourself. No one's stopping you from anything. If your parents said no to marry her, you still did.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's also a lot of, what you talked about previously in the session, Chetan, that taking onus and responsibility, taking onus for your success and failure and not taking onus for opinions of others, taking onus for what you are feeling and owning it up rather than according it to my health reasons, my childhood reasons, or my relationship reasons, and taking that onus that whatever it is to do with my conviction and my faith in myself, rather than letting a thought, a stupid mere imagination project and deliver everything for me. So
also, it's like, let's say someone's stopping you from the fearing of failure or something. You got still one life to experience that failure, right? Just do it. I mean, that's what we spoke about when we said that mindset, momentum, capability, confidence. Develop the mindset that it's okay. It's okay to fail. Why fear losing? You'll only get better at it the second time. You didn't even learn how to walk the first time. So losing is a part of learning how to walk. So that mindset is needed, that it's okay. It's okay to be, if it stops mattering to you what other people will think and judge, it's over.
And if you must
It's
fear, and if you must fear something, if you must, right, at least fear regret. Don't fear taking risks. Don't fear taking failures. I mean, it's all about, at least you learn something when you take a risk and fail. But if you must fear something, fear regret, because you do have one life. You're never going to get this chance to do it again. So go for it.
and you won't be alive walking out of it anyway. So
it was a very interesting line I read on this Snehal in a book, which said that if you take a risk, you might fail, but if you don't take it, failure is ensured.
yeah,
True.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the biggest risk is doing nothing, right?
Doing nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing nothing.
Chetan,
Like the
if you have
lockdown.
some on your
Sit at
mind,
home and do nothing.
otherwise I would want you to draw
No, I
your
think we
attention
should take
to
the
the
questions.
questions,
We should.
because there
Yeah,
are a
we
lot on the screen. Some one or two we have taken. So let's move on to question number 3 is where we will have to start with. 1 and 2 is what I have done. So what can be
Walia.
the seed of fear of loneliness is the first question that I'm taking. And now we will be, keep bouncing your ideas, comments and questions here, because now we are moving to questions since we are short of time now. So the first question that is on my screen is, what can be the seed for fear of loneliness? This very concept of loneliness, I think again, it is about projection. It is about what is loneliness according to me. What is that makes me feel lonely? What is about this concept of loneliness at the first place? How does it that only a human being in this whole of nature feels this loneliness? Have you ever seen any other entity, species, whatever you associate it in this whole of universe as nature, anyone say that this is loneliness? What is it? Why? Because they are interdependent. There is an ecosystem that operates for them, and we are so isolated from that ecosystem that we do not draw out from that interdependence. Loneliness is hidden in the concept of owning something, of being selfishly wanting something only and exclusively for myself, because otherwise it's all across in the ecosystem, and that interdependence, as it is for everyone, is for me too. That is
So
what
really
my take.
one more word to add to that. What is the seed? And I'm taking from the words that you are using. What can be the seed for the fear of loneliness? If in one word answer, it's dependence. You were talking interdependence. So the seed for loneliness is actually dependence.
Right. So rightly said. The seed for loneliness is dependence. Exactly. Right.
Yeah, you want to take the next one?
Yeah, I'm an artist. How can I overcome fear of uncertainty? I think just go through it. There are so many times in your life you're uncertain of anything, right? So just go through it and do it anyway. And there will be, I don't know if you can ever, if you're approaching it like that as overcoming something, there will always be a point, and it becomes an occupation. So I just think go through it and do it anyway. What are you uncertain of? Taking the next step, just do it.
If you're an artist, fall in love with painting, not in love with the admiration of the painting, right? And that will ensure that you remain an artist. If you fall in love with the admiration of the painting, you'll give up very soon. I think the question 5 we've already answered, so moving on. I have a fear about human character, thoughts about future, like if somebody attack me, if somebody become angry with me, how can I overcome this? Well, you might have had an incident like that, there might have been an incident where people attacked you or you attacked other people. Now you have a fear of human character. If they attack you, you'll go to a hospital, you might live, you might die, and that's the end of that. If you imagine it, you're being attacked every day already, right? And I will elaborate it a little bit for you. You have a fear of human character. Everyone should fear human character because we're basically fucking violent people, right? Everyone fears human character. We don't know what our next door neighbor will end up doing tomorrow morning or not. Now that's human character. Now, I'm not saying be stupid about it, but you don't have to imagine what a group of 4 or 5 people will do to you when you step out, because you're bringing it into you. Now, don't be oblivious to it, but you don't have to imagine it because it's stopping you from living your life. It's probably stopping you from trusting people. It's probably stopping you from making friends. It's probably stopping you from expressing yourself. It's probably stopping you from getting a job where the multiple people are concerned, probably stopping you from going to a mall, to a cinema hall, to everything. All of that because you've imagined that everyone that is there in the world is ganging up to do something to you. You're not that important. No one's ganging up to do anything to you. It's your imagination. The idea is to sit quietly, observe your imagination, and say, okay, it's fine, I'm scared, but I'm going to do it anyways.
Do it anyways, and that's what brings me to my next question, where the audience is asking a comment on procrastination versus fear. So this procrastination, also the jargon that we keep hearing, I think it's interesting to look at it, that what makes us procrastinate. And as Chetan said, keep doing, keep trying. Procrastinate is nothing but, why that happens, because I do not want to step out of my comfort zone. There is a comfort of how I want to prolong the state that I am in, and therefore I want to put it up for tomorrow. Or there is a competence gap that I am like, which is whereby I am shying away. What if I will not be able to do it? And therefore I put it off the shelf. In a way, it is again coming back to not having confidence, fearing that failure that might come out of it, stepping out of that comfort zone, and therefore the root cause again somewhere relates to that risk taking ability and fear. That is how the relationship between procrastination and fear, according to me.
We've addressed the next couple already, so I'm taking question 9. My biggest fear is speaking English. How can I overcome this fear? Uh, we all went through this journey of talking, learning words, whether it was Hindi, Kannada, Tamil. Just learn it like a new language. And I think if you want to increase your chances of success, just keep doing it, keep practicing, whether it's with people at home, whether it's over phone calls, whether it's watching movies. That's the only way to overcome it. We all learn new languages at some point.
And if you don't like speaking it, don't speak it. What's the
Yeah.
big deal about English? I mean, I think India is the only country which values other languages more than their own language. You don't have to. It's a mindset. You go to France, no one will be speaking to you in English. You go to Spain, no one's speaking in English. You go to Italy, you'll be looked down upon if you're speaking in English. So why do you value it so much? Speak in Hindi, speak in Tamil, speak in anything. It's other people's problem whether they understand it or not. It's not yours. You speak and get over with what you have to say.
And that's a good point, right? Like, think about your fears, and if you really want to overcome them. If you're scared of mountains, like Chetan said earlier, you don't have to go climb a mountain just to get rid of it, right? Now it becomes, it's very different if you're now taking other people on a trek and you need to learn how to be a mountaineer. Then you need to overcome it. So evaluate what you really need to overcome.
Yeah. What if you emotionally attached to climbing one, then by all means, if it's not going to give you any happiness, then why bother overcoming that fear? I don't know how to swim and I'm in no mood to learn it.
Yeah, it's also about a choice, not necessarily everything needs to be attended for. I mean, you're not fighting a game of battlefield, that every level you have to play. So it's just a matter of choice. Some can be left,
I think again that choice comes to other people. No, I can't do this. What will other people think of me? So let me confront it. I can't speak English. What will other people think of me? Fuck other people. What do you think of yourself? That's all that matters.
Chetan, what you're saying, and there's a very beautiful comment by one of our audience which says, we think of ourselves as what our near and dear thinks of us, and we believe them. And it's such a sorry state to be in, that what we define and what we understand ourselves is nothing but a mere perception of them, which even their image of ourselves has created. Had it been on reality, still it is something to go by. It's their image getting projected on us, creating another image which we are believing and not believing the inner heart that speaks to us. What actually a
Yeah.
state of affairs.
Yeah, and just the final answer to your question on English, guys who can't speak proper English end up becoming prime ministers of this country. So there is really no reason to be learning how to speak in English. At the age of 50, shall we look for a job change as I get fearful if I cannot adjust with a new environment or position or management? Look, you are fearful that you cannot adjust with them. They also have to adjust with you, right? And what's this fear again? It's about other people. Don't look for a job change. Don't look for anything unless you really love that new job, because it's going to be as shitty as the current one if you don't love that career. So if you are okay with the change, now go ahead. You're 50. Go ahead and do something that you would really love to do. That's your chance. It's your final, probably going to be your final shift or your final move. Give it your all to doing something that you retire as your head held up that I did what I wanted to, at least in the last 8 years of my career. I would say that if you love that new job, regardless of what people will think of you, if you bring passion to it, they will think of you well.
The next that I have on my screen is, one needs to also know when to say a no to risk. Are you saying that treat everything like a crisis and take risk? See, when it comes to crisis, there is nothing but that you will face it and you will find your way out of it. And we are not saying that you need to treat everything like a crisis. But what you should be cognizant to, what you should be mindful of, that what is that risk not being amplified, what is that fear not being experimented stopping you from? As you know, in the session somewhere we had said, what is it that you will attempt if you were guaranteed that you would not fail? Now, is that risk coming in the way of that? Is that exposure to that risk, is that exposure to that fear coming in that way? Then it is worthwhile an attempt. If it is meaning that you will push out your cocoon for once more, if it is meaning that you will try and breach your comfort zone, trust me, it is worth it. And there is a follow-up question to it also, that, you know, what is wrong in preserving with something that I have created? No, we are not saying that there is something wrong in preserving, and I'm sure you've created it all because of all the hard work and things that have gone into it. The wrong is that sometimes in order to preserve that status, that recognition, that all that you have earned for yourself, what we end up doing is we devoid ourselves of that freedom of choice that comes to us. That comes to us every moment and every moment of our being, even in the roles that have earned all that for us. So while it's great to preserve, while it's great to aspire for more, having said that, if you're doing it at the cost of freedom and choicelessness, it's really not worth it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong in preserving unless it's interfering with you doing what you really want to do. Otherwise, there's nothing wrong in preserving. And having preserved it,
Success is awesome. Sorry.
Go on, Snehal.
Yeah, success is awesome. Then how can people have a fear of success? Oh, it's as real as fear of failure, because with success comes people assume a certain responsibility. They're afraid of maybe not having enough time with their family if they get too successful. That can just as easily hold you back. So people do fear success just as they fear failure.
A very
How can you
common
sorry.
example for that would be that you give a new idea in the company. What if it succeeds? It's going to fall on you. And a lot of people I've seen will stop giving those ideas, but just in case it succeeds, it becomes part of my business plan. That's the fear of success. It's not the failure that's stopping you. You give a new idea that you can open an office in this territory. It's going to become a part of your target, and that's the fear. So why give it? How can you totally disregard
So taking on that responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How can what other people think? How can we make our sales if we don't bother about what our client thinks? So it's a, how can you disregard what other people think? You're not disregarding what other people think, you're disregarding what they think about you. All right, there's a difference. So when you're talking about a client situation, you are talking about solving a problem that they perceive. What he thinks about you, if you're conscious of that, you're only going to look nice and walk without the check, because you'll be needy. Whenever people are needy, considering it's a question of sales right now, if you go across into a meeting you're needy in, you'll be giving away a lot of value in the negotiation that you will be getting. So that's what's wrong with how, if you're going on a pleasing mode, think about this thing. Let's say you've gone and buy the car and you will instantly know whether the salesman is needy or greedy or needing you or not. If he's needing you, you're not paying him the full price. And that's what happens to you as well.
And that's interesting, isn't it human nature to actually run away from something that's not coming easily? So it's just a continuation of that. If you come easy, then of course, there's just one way to go. Well, the
Yeah,
next
these
that I
guys.
wanted
Go
yeah,
ahead. Go
sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead.
The next that I want to take is, most of the time, if you ignore gossips and opinions, blah, 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 knowing that, there is something that reaches my superiors and there is a information that is fed to him, how do I deal with this boldly? The only way to deal with this boldly is to be bold about it. I mean, if there is some incorrect information that you feel has reached your superior, if I was you, I'll go and confront it and talk about it. That would be my way. Having said that, I'm very sure that your superior has an opinion of you, and there is, lot many things that would work in your favor if it is all about those gossips. But at the root of this question, why even that care about gossips and the impression that my superior is going to have? So while there is a quick way to deal with it, the more important thing to, just a second, Snehal, the more important thing here is that, the very association of our mind with these gossips, with my right image, with that I should look good in front of the other, is the undercurrent that is guiding this thought. And that's the thought to ponder about. Why that
And
image?
really, at this point, you need to deal with it if you're inconfident about your performance. Otherwise, you don't. If you're doing well and you're doing your work well, the superior needs to deal with it, not you.
Not you, yeah.
If
Snehal,
you're
you
not
were
doing
saying
well,
something.
then you need to. Sorry.
No, it was just a comment. I suspect, no, I just suspect the question is from a gossip himself or herself. That's why the worry.
That's so true.
What to do when one is fearful because of unpleasant childhood experiences that don't leave our mind? Again, not to take away from what you may have experienced. Yes, when you experienced it, it was an actuality. It was very real. But now thinking about it years later, it's like we talked about how when fear enters your mind, it's through thought or imagination. It may not exist anymore, right? So it's not going to happen every day. But I'm not saying don't be reckless, and I'm not saying don't take your precautions. But just get this into your head that you're just imagining this over and over again, and God knows what it's stopping you from doing, or God knows how it's stopping you from even moving on.
And also, just to add on it before I take the next question, we have this great persona of exclusivity when it comes to our suffering, right? That there is something that happened in your childhood that you have to deal with, and nothing happened to everybody else. Everybody had some screwed up incident in their childhood that they have to deal with. Everyone has suffering in their lives that they have to deal with, and everyone is an emotional wreck at level that they have to deal with. It's not exclusive to you. It's the reality of 7 billion people in the world. So first thing is to accept that this is not something special that's happened to you that you have to deal with. It's happened to everybody, and it's happened in past. Everyone has a past. Get rid of this victim mentality that you have to deal with it. Nothing has to be done. Acknowledge it and move forward. What can you do about it? It's happened. Now it's fearful only when you imagine that it will happen again. So stop imagining it. Or go to a psychologist and take depression pills and ruin your life. How to control physical and mental stability while we have fear. You have fear only when you bring in your thought process by imagining a situation into the present. It doesn't exist. So there's nothing to control physically, there's nothing to control mentally, except for just being in a position to recognize that you're bringing it into your life. And the moment you recognize it, most likely it's over. If I realize that I have a fear of the dark and I'm only imagining it in my head by going into, don't imagine, switch on the light and get over it, no? Meanwhile,
And
live with it.
yeah, it's not about that you can control what is happening to you physically and mentally. What you can control is this thought that is creating that fear in you. So rather than working upon the symptoms as to how do I do when I get into fear, what you need to make yourself aware about is how do I get into that state of fear is by imagining, and therefore to do something about that imagination.
Also, I think this is stemming a lot from the way psychology deals with it, is to go into incidents and go into past life regressions and whatnot. How will it see? You go into an incident, it resolves one fear, right? It'll resolve that. Does it get rid of fear itself? It doesn't. You might overcome your fear of darkness, this fear of death over. So the only way to recognize fear is recognize fear as a whole, and no matter which fear it is, it comes only through imagination. So it's not about resolving one fear, it's about resolving fear as a whole.
How do you handle fear? How to handle our counterproductive behaviors like worrying too much, social anxiety, intolerance? How can I stop such things getting in the way of my everyday life and goals? And I'm so glad whosoever asked this question asked this, because there is a reason we did this topic of fear. Because even when we did it for the first time, we had a lot of follow-up coming around such things. And I think it's a moment for all of us to identify with this question and also ponder about what I'm about to say. This very fear, what you're talking about, intolerance, anxieties, on some counterproductive behaviors, comments of others, some of the times, the way to end all of this is just to end it. This how to is not about creating another beginning. This how to is not about finding a way to end my fear, but it is about ending my fear. It is about putting end to those thoughts that are making you go towards this counterproductive behavior, that are triggering those worrying points for you. Because eventually, please know that it is all coming from your imagination. Just put that end to that imagination. Just put a little more salt to the belief that you are carrying, that you actually are a beautiful creation of this nature, and you have all that it takes for you to be whatever you desire to be. And with that conviction, and put an end to all this that you have been, whether it is intolerating, whether it is social anxiety, whatever you are naming it as, just put a stop to it, period. There is no another way.
And really, as long as there is inaction, you can only be anxious, intolerant, worrying, sitting in your bed. Go out there and act on the opposite reality. When you are in the middle of action, there is nothing of this sort. So you can sit in a chair, sulk and brood and think about all of this, or you can actually go out there and do something. And while doing something, none of this will come. It's only when we don't do, it's in inaction that we are anxious. We're not anxious while we are acting.
Yeah, and see, Chetan, all these questions, everyone is talking about what will others think of? How do I do this with others? What will others say? Who is this others?
Yeah.
We are
Yeah,
these
that's the
others
next.
for everyone. Yeah, I mean, so
And
we
that's
might as well mind our own business, and you also go and mind your own business, and the problem of others really solves for everyone. So
And why
really,
should
I
you
mean,
care about what anybody else thinks? Live your life
yeah.
about what you think. It's your life. You have one life. You don't have 100 lives that you're living for other people. So if you do have when the next 99 will come, dedicate them to other people. This one, live for yourself, please.
Yeah.
yeah, and
Tell
then
them that.
that's the next
Live for you.
question.
Yes,
And
Snehal,
that's
go
the next
on.
question as well. How do we prevent others having an opinion of our success? They're going to have an opinion regardless. Now you can sit and worry about everyone that has an opinion, and you are probably opinionated yourself. But you just have to learn to accept and not give two hoots as to what other people think. They're going to have an
Absolutely.
opinion of you regardless.
Regardless, you can become the prime minister of this country. You can become Dhirubhai Ambani, and you can become Steve Jobs. People will criticize you, right? So who the hell are you to not being? Let them do it. Big deal. Why should it stop
Yeah.
you? Is the question. I was
And like
working as
advice,
an
opinions are free.
yeah, I was working as an agricultural officer 10 years back. I took a long leave from my job, but I'm looking to restart my career. Now the fear is holding me back. How do I overcome this? What is holding you back? I can't understand that. You have to restart your career, but the fear is that you're out of track and it's holding you back. So you'll mess up someone else's company. What's your problem? Go mess it up. You're imagining all sorts of things. I think the answer was confidence. And we said, surround yourself with people around you who are confident about you doing this. I think you have a lot of negative voices around you who are making you even more and more scared. Please start looking at it positively. Go get back to your career. You've been out of it 10 years is a long time in itself. Now you're going to restart. Think positively. Imagine good things, and good things will happen. And if they don't deal with it, then why deal with it now?
And Chetan, I have this point to this holding back
How to
thing.
deal with the
What
fear of,
holds
sorry, go ahead, Rolly.
what holds us back is not about restart. It's that my colleagues are 10 years ahead of me. They have
True.
become people perhaps whom I would end up reporting into. And most of the time, I'm not saying for this gentleman who asked, there are friends of mine who, because of family reasons, because of any reasons, have been into the situation that they need to restart their career. And many a times I have heard them say that what holds them back is they are going to probably start at a salary that they were earning when they were 3 years into the career, that they are going to start at a level that they were when they probably retired, they probably took that sabbatical. That is also something that holds back people. So please identify, is it really that your confidence, as Chetan said, is it this fear that what will people think if I start at such a meager level now? The
Or
point is
is it a
start at
comfort zone that or is it a comfort zone that you've just got used to being plain lazy?
yeah. So it
These
could be any.
questions.
So yeah.
Sorry, Snehal.
Snehal, go on.
No, no. I guess I'm not willing to be uncomfortable for that period of time.
Yeah.
Also, yeah. How to deal with the fear of the paranormal. Now, this is debatable because I don't believe it exists. So, if you don't believe that it exists, there's nothing to fear. But if you do believe and you're going to sit and argue with me that you have had a paranormal experience and I don't know, you've seen somebody walking backwards towards you. I don't know what else to say, but try and start a
So
conversation or something because honestly, people really does not exist.
not about fear of this or that. It could be fear of paranormal. It could be fear of darkness. It could
Yeah.
be fear of death. Don't analyze it as a singularity. Analyze it as a plurality. That this is fear. And regardless of the nature of the fear, you have to imagine a situation for it to enter your mind. Now, you have a fear of paranormal. If you have access to the paranormal and you see it clearly, there might be nothing to fear. But if it is actually something, if you're not seeing it, then it's imagination. So there, whether it's fear of darkness, I will imagine that there's someone inside. I don't really know. So you have to. It's not the fear that you have to overcome. It's the thought that you have to overcome because you're bringing it in.
That's so
Best
true.
friend cheated. Now I'm fearful of making new friends. What do I do? Sit and sulk. What else to do? Look, someone cheated on you, right? Best friend of yours cheated on you. Basically means that they took something from you, right? Consider it a gift you give to people and get cheated on again. And consider it your mindset that as long as people are taking from you and as long as you're the giver, it's okay. Why not take a risk? Now you don't want to make more friends because someone else cheated. Why deny all the wonderful people your company? It's again, I mean, some incident happens doesn't mean it will happen again. And if it happens again, so be it. You still go on living. If you like making friends and if you like being around people, by all means, go ahead. And get cheated again. So what? You learn another way of not getting to be cheated the third time around. Mindset. I've
Do
gotten
people
cheated more
imagine?
times in my life that I can tell
Listen,
you.
life's
So
too short.
True. Do people imagine
Life's too
worst
short.
case?
Just move on.
I'll take the next question now, which is, do people imagine worst case scenario to protect themselves from disappointment? How to overcome this tendency? Yes, it is about, protecting them for disappointment, that, okay, let me be prepared for the worst, which somewhere in the conversation we did talk about it. Having said that, the point is not to overcome this tendency. The way, we always deal with this is whether we have to find a how to, or we have to overcome this, or we have to do something about it. No, the worst case scenario, as long as you are being mindful about it in an intelligent way, that you're trying to secure a basic, take a basic precautions, all that is welcome. The problem is when you extrapolate it to hindsight, it is stopping your very being. That is something where worst case imagination itself becomes the worst case. You may not ever reach that worst case ever, but in your imagination you have already created it to such a hyper level of your it manifesting for you that you will not even attempt. That is the tendency that you need to let go of. Preparing for worst case, okay, you are going to probably go for a swimming and you are preparing for worst case, and therefore carrying an extra shot of whatever can help you in that situation is all coming from an intelligence. Having said that, stopping yourself from that very experience because something happened to someone is an extrapolation. That tendency is what you need to stop for yourself, right?
Do you think being spiritual will help to get rid of fear? Listen, I would say, fine, if you think it helps, go for it. But instead, why don't you examine the nature of fear, right? We're saying that it only enters your mind when you think about it. So it is a figment of your imagination. So when you examine fear like that, there's really nothing to do because it doesn't exist unless it's an actual physical threat. So I don't know if you praying to Ganesha or Jesus or Allah is going to help you get rid of fear. But look at fear is entire thing, just
And
a
what is being
figment of your
spiritual?
imagination.
What is being spiritual, anyways? I mean, it's another imagination, right? And the whole of
True.
spiritual world, you go to guru or something, sustains itself again on fear that if you don't do it, something as per this custom, you'll be an outcast. That itself, the whole religious science itself sustains itself on fear. So what will you be spiritual? You move from one fear to another fear, now fear of God. If I'm harsh to my loved one, boss, etc., I'm not taking the next question because it's been answered. If I'm harsh to my loved one, boss, etc., maybe I'm not doing it. Look, anger is directly related to fear. You're angry about things that you're fearful about. If you're getting angry at your boss, at your loved one, at your spouse, at your kids, because you're fearful of or you're mindful of stopping certain action in them before it reaches to that stage. You're stopping it because you fear that action. Confront your fear, stop being nasty about it. Right? You might be fearful that if you let that conversation go, it might not turn in your favor. So let me cut it by anger. Your anger is a diversion from your fear. Right? It's not anger. It's not values. It's not ethics. It's not integrity. You label it all such. It's not tradition. It's not the way things are supposed to be done. You'll find excuses and label it like that. At the root of it, your anger is your fear of things not going your way.
Right. So going to marketplace and shopping in this COVID situation, is it a risk which involve fear? No. So no way we are saying that, you need to expose yourself to risk of what can challenge your survival, what can challenge your well-being. That is a situation where all of us are. Whatever precautions you need to take to discharge your daily duties, whatever, whether it is about wearing a mask or whatever social distancing you're practicing, all that, yes, it does make us fearful, someone that we may contract the disease, but instead of calling it fear, it's actually a danger that you are alive to. It's right out there. And with the way it has grown, I think that is less about fear. That's more about being present to what is happening if you are taking those precautions. So I first of all would not be able to qualify this situation as fear. But yeah, that would be my answer to it. And how to deal with it practically is by
Yeah,
being
I think
intelligent and being safe about it.
just be intelligent about it, and that's it. Yeah. What's the difference between fear and intuition? Both a matter of convenience. You can choose either word. I have an intuition about this and I have a fear about this. Both are your imagination. So let's move on to the next. Both are convenience. You will use that as a excuse for other people still. I have an intuition, so I'm going ahead and doing it, and I have a fear, so I'm not doing it. So it's all a matter of convenience.
These things that are coming, intuition, spirituality, and all of these things, I'm sure everyone connects to them in a very different way. And therefore, we are not bringing it out as to what could be the real meaning of them for each one of you. To some, it may really mean a great connect or whatever it may mean.
Like
Having said that,
it's like कोई excuse नहीं बचा तो भगवान ने बोला.
yeah, so that's what I was about to say. Most of the time, the context in which we as human beings, as a race, have learned to use all of this is only and only based on convenience. I mean, most of the
Yeah.
time, I have seen people describing them as God fearing. I mean, God is not to be feared. If He's the creator of us, He's not to be feared at all. He's not a cannibal that will come and eat us. So I really, the way we have started to understand all these things and customize it to what suits us and our convenience, that's really pathetic. So that's what I would say about it. Yeah. Okay. Let's take the next question. I'm
How to
sorry, I've
stop
lost
thinking
track.
about fear?
Yeah.
How to stop thinking about fear? What should be the counter affirmation? Look, there is nothing opposite to be done in response to a fear. There's something to be recognized, which is it's coming into your mind through imagination. Once you see it, it ends. If you don't see it, you'll get into all sorts of neurotic actions, right? You go to a guru, you'll take prasad from this thing, or you will have a mantra, or you'll do. There's nothing to be done. If I've recognized that fear is coming by me thinking about it, pay attention to it, and it's over in the moment. Right now, where you are sitting, know this: you are not scared. So if you're not scared, how will it enter your mind? It will enter your mind through thinking. So pay attention to that, and it's over.
I think we have very less time, so we'll quickly take one question each, and that should be it until we don't have something else on the screen. The next that I have is it possible that fear comes out of not being clear about your goal or not knowing where one wants to go? So I think not being clear about your goal, not knowing where one wants to go is a phase that probably can come to everyone's life at one point in time. And I mean, we are all about experimentation, and there are times when you have a little hazy picture. As long as you're ready to dive into that belief that you have about yourself, as long as you are, as Chetan talked about, capability, competence, and about confidence, as long as you're able to trust that and take a leap forward, I think that will clear that haziness for you. And that is what should be done in such situations. Just have faith and have move on. I mean, that there is no second way to do this.
Yeah.
I have a beautiful comment which has just come, and if no one is taking other questions, we have lots on our screen, but we are short on time. We lose ourselves in pleasing others, and I think that's really a takeaway that I would want you to stay with. And Chetan, you can have your concluding comments after this. That yes, we do lose ourselves in pleasing others, and at the end we don't even end up pleasing them anyway. So what's the point? Chetan, over to you. Just a final.
I will take one last question and conclude, which is the last question on the screen. I've skipped a few, so we're sorry about that for time. What has been your personal experience when you were about to take a significant leap in your life, that wherever I paid attention to what other people want, that leap never happened? And wherever you paid attention to what's the right thing to do, it's very easy to take the leap. So don't live by other people, live by yourself. It's not that you become reckless towards other people, but recognize that their happiness is dependent upon yours. And when you are doing the right thing, it's the right thing. It doesn't have to be the acceptable thing, because if everyone thought of doing the acceptable things, there would have been no transformation on earth. So it's your responsibility to do the right thing. And I think that's what we would like to end this webinar with. And thank you, all of you, for being here, and see you again sometime with the new topic. Roli, Snehal, anything from you guys, sir?
No, I guess it's good to go from my end too. See you all. We loved your interaction, comments, and questions for making this so lively for us that we too loved it. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It was fun. Bye.